දවස් 30ක්ම unlimited Netflix බලන්න. unlimited data pack එකක් මුළු පවුලටම unlimited fun එකක් අරගන්න. අදම active කරගන්න.
ලෙන්ගතුකම වැඩි කරගන්න ලව්ජු රුපියල් 50ට අඩු කළා.
මාමේ එන්න අපිට එකක් බොමු.
Tonight, new cluster, new rules. The epidemiology unit warns that the new COVID-19 cases come with a higher virus load and a more expanded spread per patient than first wave. Not so fast. National Operations Centre dashes public hopes of Gampaha district reopening and extends curfew until further notice. Year-end hopes. The World Health Organization announces that COVID-19 vaccine could be finalized by end of November. All that and much more coming up on First at 9, this Sunday the 25th of October 2020.
Nava Sunlight Sakura. Then Dikukal Pavatina Sakura Mal Suandin.
From AdaDerana, this is AdaDerana First at 9. Live from Studio 24 in Colombo.
Good evening and welcome to First at 9. I'm Dhammik Ekanaika. Let's start with your local stories and as usual by taking a look at the pandemic situation. Now the epidemiology unit says that the virus load in COVID-19 patients from the new cluster is higher and the virus seems to be spreading to a greater number from a single infected patient. Chief Epidemiologist Dr. Sudat Samaravira warns that if the situation is not controlled quickly, the health authorities and the government may reach a point where they will not be able to control it this time around.
Sri Lanka reported 263 new COVID-19 infections today. Out of this total, 227 were identified as associates of people who had visited the Paliagoda fish market, while the remaining 36 were identified at quarantine centres. Meanwhile, a total of 368 COVID-19 infections were confirmed in the island yesterday. 232 of yesterday's patients are also those stemming from the Paliagoda cluster. The cases were identified in 23 areas in the country. Of the 136 remaining infections, 24 were confirmed from all fisheries harbours, 29 from Colombo, 28 from Gampaha, 8 from Kalutara and Kurunegala, 2 from Matara, and 37 from quarantine centres.
ඔක්තෝබර් මාසේ 4 වෙනිදා සිට අපි අත්දකින අලුත් පොකුරුවල අපි දකින විශේෂ ලක්ෂණයක් තමයි ඒ රෝගීන්ගේ තියෙන වෛරස් ප්‍රමාණය වැඩි ඒ වගේම පැතිරීමේ යම්කිසි විදියකින් වෙනදාට වඩා වේගයක් අපි දකිනවා පුද්ගලයෙකුගෙන් තවත් බෝ වෙන පුද්ගලයන් ප්‍රමාණය ගත්තහම යම්කිසි විදියකින් වැඩිවීමක් අපි දකිනවා මේ තත්ත්වය තුලින් රෝගයේ ව්‍යාප්ත වීමේ අවදානම තියෙනවා මේ අවස්ථාවේ ජනතාවගේ සංචරණයට දැඩි සීමා පනවලා නැහැ තෝරාගත් ප්‍රදේශවලට විතරයි ඇඳිරි නීතිය පනවා තියෙන්නේ ඒ නිසා ජනතාව සංචරණය කරනවා තවත් පුද්ගලයන් හමු වෙනවා සමාජයට එනවා ඒ නිසා අන්තර් සම්බන්ධතාවය වැඩි නිසා මේ රෝගයේ පැතිරීමේ අවදානම වැඩි සමහර වෙලාවට යකෙක් අවස්ථාවක් එන්න පුළුවන් සෞඛ්‍ය අමාත්‍යාංශයට හෝ රජයට මේ සඳහා සම්පූර්ණ පාලනය කිරීම අපහසු වෙනවා අපි ඊටාත්ම ඉක්මනින් මේ රෝගයේ පාලනය කළේ නැත්නම් වැඩිහිටියන් අතරට නැත්නම් නිදංගත රෝග තියෙන අයට වැඩිපුර ආසාදනය වීම නිසා මරණ අපිට අත්දකින්න සිද්ධ වෙන්න පුළුවන්.
In the meantime, Army Commander Lieutenant General Shavindra Silva announced that curfew has been imposed in the police areas of Fort, Peta, Borella and Valikada from 6 p.m. today until further notice. He also stated that the curfew in the Aludgama, Payagala and Berola police areas too will continue until further notice. Accordingly, all police areas in the Gampaha district, 7 police areas in the Kalutara district, 5 police areas in the Kurunagal district, 19 in the Colombo district, and the Valachennai police area in the Batiklo district will have curfews in place.
ගම්පහ දිස්ත්‍රික්කයේ මේ වනට කොවිඩ් ආසාදිතයන් නොමැති ප්‍රදේශ සමැදිව මේ වන විටත් විශ්ලේෂණයක් කරලා ඉදිරියේදී මේ සම්බන්ධව අනවශ්‍ය නම් එම ප්‍රදේශවලින් ඇඳිරි නීතිය ඉවත් කිරීමට උනත් අපි පසුබටවන්නේ නැහැ. ඒ වගේම තමයි විශේෂයෙන් අනිත් කොළඹ විශේෂයෙන්ම ඇඳිරි නීතිය යොදවා ඇති ප්‍රදේශවල තවදුරටත් ඇඳිරි නීතිය පත්වාගෙන යෑමට කටයුතු කරන ලබනවා.
In other developments, the Ministry of Health reassured the public that there is no scientific evidence to prove that the novel coronavirus could be transmitted through cooked fish. Issuing a statement, the ministry stated that the closure of fish markets was unnecessary and that they could continue to operate while adhering to the prescribed health and safety guidelines. However, due to the current public concerns, the ministry stated that while preparing fish purchased from vendors, all persons must wash their hands thoroughly, must not touch their faces, and ensure that all utensils are cleaned well. Meanwhile, the Prime Minister's office today denied media reports claiming that an officer attached to the Prime Minister's security detail had contracted the virus. The Prime Minister's office issued a statement denying that an officer deployed at either the Prime Minister's office, Temple Trees, or at his official residence on Vijay Ramamawatha had tested positive. However, the statement added that an officer attached to the external unit of the Prime Minister's security detail had been diagnosed with the virus and had not reported to duty since the 17th of October. The statement added that the officer was only engaged in providing security to outdoor events that are attended by the Premier. In another development, after 6 staff members at the Kalutara Teaching Hospital were confirmed with the COVID-19 virus, the hospital's emergency ward, ward number 23 and 7, as well as the OPD have been closed. Health authorities stated that 3 of the infected patients had previously visited the Palligura fish market. However, director of the hospital, Dr. Asela Gunawardana, stated that the 23rd ward and the OPD have been reopened after disinfection. In the meantime, the police stated that a sub-inspector of the Parliamentary Intelligence Unit has been infected with the virus. As a result, 8 of his close associates have been placed in self-quarantine within the Parliament premises. Meanwhile, a police officer at the Mirihana Police Canteen who visited the Palligura fish market has also been diagnosed with the COVID-19 virus. Accordingly, 64 police officers who were his associates have been directed to self-quarantine, while steps were taken to disinfect the police station. In another development, the owner of a dry fish shop in the Valisara Economic Centre has been infected with the virus. Health officials said that he had contracted the virus from an employee at the Palligura fish market. Accordingly, the PCR samples were obtained from 100 persons at the Valisara Economic Centre and 5 police officers at the Mahabaghe police station. Meanwhile, a COVID-19 infected person was confirmed in Hatton today. The man had reportedly purchased fish from the Palligura fish market for sale in Hatton. As a result of this, health authorities took steps to direct his associates to self-quarantine. In the meantime, a resident of Estate Housing Complex in the Kotiyagala Tea Estate in Bogawa Antalava has been diagnosed with the COVID-19 virus. Health authorities stated that he had visited the Palligura fish market.
Safeguard hand sanitizer. Navatama nishpadana pela neerokimat diviyakata.
The National Operations Centre for the Prevention of COVID-19 meanwhile says that the curfew imposed across the Gampaha district remains in place until further notice. However, outlets retailing essential items, pharmacies and banks in the district will be permitted to open to the public only tomorrow from 8 a.m. to 10 p.m. In the meantime, police media spokesperson DIG Ajit Rohana says that essential services staffers will be allowed to use official identity cards as curfew passes in order to report to work.
Army Commander Lieutenant General Shavendra Silva says that the curfew in the Gampaha district imposed on the 21st of this month will remain in effect until further notice. Previously, the curfew was scheduled to be lifted at 5 a.m. tomorrow. Further, police spokesman DIG Ajit Rohana revealed that the government will allow all essential food outlets and pharmacies to open for business only tomorrow from 8 a.m. to 10 p.m. in the Gampaha district.
Permission has been granted to open up shops and supermarkets, pharmacies and other commercial institutions that provide essential services to the general public and customers. In addition to that, state banks and private banks are allowed to open tomorrow in Gampaha district, and their services could be rendered from 8 a.m. to 10 p.m. in the night. We have given permission to the employees of essential services such as airports, ports, immigration, custom, media, health services, water, electricity and communication services to use their official ID as the curfew permit.
In the meantime, the Sri Lanka Railways has decided to cancel all trains operating on the main line, the Kalani Valley and Puttalam lines with effect from tomorrow. However, special trains on main lines for advanced level candidates will operate. Further, the Railway Control Room has also decided to suspend all night mail trains leaving Colombo Fort, except for the Galle night mail train. Meanwhile, taking the current situation into account, the Department of Labour has requested the public to use its hotline to reserve a date and a time to obtain any services. The department also requested the public to obtain all employers' provident fund forms from the respective district labour office instead. The contact details of the nearest Labour office can be found on the department's official website www.labourdepartment.gov.lk. In the meantime, the chief organizer of the Manning Market Trade Union, Anil Indrajit, stated that the market will reopen on the 2nd of November in line with health and safety guidelines. Meanwhile, a religious observance to invoke blessings on the country and for its protection from COVID-19 worked off last evening at the Ruwan Velisaya in Anuradhapura. Meanwhile, the Gampa District Secretary Sunil Jailat says that a request has been made to the Ministry of Finance to obtain the necessary provisions to grant an allowance of Rs 5,000 to 15 more police areas where the curfew has been imposed. Accordingly, over 2.32 billion rupees will be distributed among 464,000 families. Under the first phase of the program, the 5,000 rupee allowance has already been provided to families in the Minuwangoda, Divulapitiya and Veyangoda police areas in the Gampa district.
The World Health Organization says that a COVID-19 virus vaccine could be ready for production by the end of late November, but warns that expectations must be managed with trial success rates still between 10 and 20%. Chief Scientist of the World Health Organization, Dr. Soumya Swaminathan, says that scientists will have to look at the data and then see what could be done with them.
As the coronavirus continues to wreak havoc across economies and lives, the World Health Organization offered a glimmer of hope, stating that they are looking at having 10 vaccines currently in Phase 3 trials to be produced before the end of this year. Chief Scientist of the World Health Organization, Dr. Soumya Swaminathan, says that a vaccine result could be expected by late November. Speaking at a webinar hosted by the WHO, Dr. Swaminathan went on to say that even after production, regulators will have to look at the data and decide what could be done with it, because it may be limited on safety. With the success rate of vaccine trials around 10 to 20%, she said that the expectations need to be balanced. Director General of the World Health Organization, Dr. Tedros Ghebreyesus, said that the world is at a critical juncture in the pandemic, especially in the Northern Hemisphere. He made these remarks as many countries continue to see an exponential rise in cases, with ICUs running close to or above capacities. Further, he urged world leaders to take immediate action to prevent unnecessary deaths and essential health services from collapsing and schools shutting down again. Executive Director of WHO's Health Emergencies Program, Dr. Mike Ryan, explained that Europe is experiencing a rise in the number of cases, hospitalizations and fatalities. He added that efforts need to be made to keep the fatality rate low.
We will see you shortly after this break. Stay with us.
Ceylon Bank, the bank with a heart.
Welcome back. You're watching First at 9. Now, Chief Incumbent of the Sri Abhayarame Temple in Narahempita, Venerable Muruthettuwe Ananda Thera, says that he will continue the struggle against dangerous clauses in the 20th Amendment to the Constitution until they are removed. The Thera cited the dual citizenship issue as an example and stated that such clauses could enable diaspora interference in the country's affairs.
Prime Minister Mahinda Rajapaksa called on the chief incumbent of the Sri Abhayarame Temple in Naraympita, Venerable Muruthettuwe Ananda Thera, this morning. Following the meeting, the Thera spoke to media personnel present at the premises.
විශ්තර අපි විරුද්ධ වෙන්නේ නැහැ කවදාවත්. අපි විරුද්ධ වෙන්නේ විශ්තේ තියෙන යමා වගන්ති වලට. මේ ditthwa පුරාජභාවය කියන එක බොහොම භයානක එකක්. ඩයස්පෝරා ඉන්නේ උන්ට සල්ලි ඕඩර් තරම් තියෙනවා. ඇමරිකාවෙන් කැනඩාවෙන් එහෙම ඇවිල්ලා මුන් මේ ඉඳන් මේ ඡන්දේ පාවිච්චි කරලා යම් කිසි වැඩ පිළිලක් කරොත් අපිට මොකද වෙන්නේ? අපි දුරදිග බලලා මේ කතා කරන්නේ. මේ විශ්වයේ තිබෙන භයානකම් සියල්ලම අඩු කරනකම් අපේ සටන ඒ ආකාරයෙන් යනවා කියන එක මතක් කරගන්න. එතෙන්දි ජනාධිපතිතුමා දුන්න අදහස වෙනස් වුණොත් විශ්ව කොහෙද ඉන්නේ අපි කොතනද ඉන්නේ කියන එක බලා ගන්න පුළුවන් ඉතින්දි. ආන්සාර කියන්නේ අනිවාර්යයෙන්ම මේක ditthwa පුරාජභාවයේ ඒ වගන්ති ගත්තේ පාර්ලිමේන්තුවේ ඉන්නේ ප්‍රාණපකාරයෝ දෙපැත්තට කතා කර හිටියට අතිබහුතරක කොට විරුද්ධව කතා කරන්නේ නැහැ බයි. ඔවුන්ට ඕනකම තිබෙන්නේ රට ආරක්ෂා කිරීම නේ පුටු ආරක්ෂා කරගැනීම. මට මෙතෙන්දි එකක් කියන්න පුළුවන්කම තියෙනවා අපි බොහොම කොන්දක් නැහැ කිව්වේ මෛත්‍රීපාල තිරසේනට කොන්දක් තියෙනවා කියලා කියන්න පුළුවන්කම තියෙන මෙතෙන්දි. ඉතින් එතුමා ආවේ නැහැ ඡන්දෙ. ඒක තමයි කොන්දක් නිසා ආවේ නැත්තේ. සමගි ජන බලවේගයේ අයිතිකාර ඩයනා ගමගේ එයත් මේ ආණ්ඩුවට ඡන්දෙ දුන්නානේ. ගෙම්බි ප්‍රතිපත්තිය තමයි ඔයගොල්ලන්ගේ තියෙන කියන එක තමයි කියන්න පුළුවන්කම. ආණ්ඩුව ඡන්දෙ ගත්තේ විපක්ෂයේ ඉන්න නිර්ෂාඩ් බද්රුදීන් මහතාගේ පක්ෂයෙන් සහ රවුෆ් හකීම් මහතාගේ පක්ෂ. අපේ 3-2 ඡන්ද බලයට වඩා ලක්ෂ 500 බලය වැඩි වුණායි කියලා සමහරු කියනවා.
Now, a Maulavi of the Zahran Hashim-controlled National Tawhid Jamaat Mosque in Kathankudi, who is currently in remand custody, was brought before the Presidential Commission of Inquiry last afternoon. When questioned over the authorization for the release of over 5 million rupees in mosque funds to Zahran, the Maulavi stated that despite being signed for by himself and the mosque's treasurer Mustaqeen, they had no knowledge as to what the funds would be used for other than what they were told by the extremist leader. According to the witness, Zahran had informed the two mosque office bearers that the funds were to be used to pay for construction work on the mosque.
A close associate of Easter attack mastermind Zahran Hashim, Maulavi Muhammad Yusuf Muhammad Tawfiq, who is currently in remand custody, was brought before the Presidential Commission of Inquiry investigating the Easter Sunday attacks by prison officials last afternoon for the recording of his testimony. At the outset, the senior state counsel at the commission asked the suspect, "Were you employed as a Maulavi at the mosque operated by Zahran Hashim, and did you receive a monthly salary for this?" The suspect replied, "Yes, I was invited by Zahran Hashim to teach the Islamic faith as a Maulavi. Afterwards, in 2014, I joined the National Tawhid Jamaat Mosque in Kathankudi as a paid Maulavi." The senior state counsel then asked the suspect, "Did you at any point transfer a sum of rupees 5,484,000 rupees to Zahran from a bank account held by you and an individual named Mustaqeen?" To this, the Maulavi responded, "Both myself and Mustaqeen, who is the organization's official treasurer, signed for the release of the funds. The funds were then handed over to Mustaqeen as he was the treasurer. I have no knowledge of whether he then handed over the funds to Zahran after this." When the senior state counsel then asked the suspect if he was aware of what the funds were to be used for, the Maulavi replied that the funds were allegedly to be used for construction work on the mosque. The senior state counsel then asked the Maulavi which candidate did Zahran and the National Tawhid Jamaat organization lend their support to during the 2015 presidential elections. The Maulavi replied, "We did not explicitly instruct the people to support a specific candidate. We only offered certain guidelines to the people on what they should base their choice on. We told them to choose someone who is not corrupt. We also entered into numerous agreements with several political parties. These included MLAM Hizbullah, Abdul Rahman, Shibli Farooq and Ruby." Following his reply, the appeals court judge at the commission asked the suspect, "Where were you when the bombs went off and devastation reigned on 21st April 2019? The Maulavi replied, "I was at the mosque at the time." The appeals court judge then asked him, "When was it that you last met Zahran Hashim?" The Maulavi replied, "I did not see Zahran after the Aliyar Junction clash on 10th March 2017 in Kathankudi. I didn't even speak to him on the phone after this." The appeals court judge then asked the suspect, "When were you placed under arrest?" The Maulavi responded, 2 days after the attack, the Criminal Investigations Department and the Terrorist Investigation Division visited my residence and asked me if I would be able to identify Zahran from his decapitated head. I then identified him as requested by them." The suspect added, "Afterwards I was arrested on 28th April.
Meanwhile, 2 children have been hospitalized in a mine explosion that occurred in the area of Maduin Manor. Reportedly, the 2 boys aged 10 and 12 had accompanied their grandmother to collect firewood in an area close to their home. The children had played with an object they found in the shrub, which had subsequently exploded. The object was believed to be an explosive device left over from the war with the LTT terrorists. The injured siblings are residents from the area of Iranailupaikkulam and have been admitted to the Vaunia hospital for treatment. Madu police have launched investigations into the incident. Now, AdaDerana, along with Dialogue, recommenced its special humanitarian operations to extend a helping hand to those affected by the curfew imposed in many areas of the country. Accordingly, a project was worked off in Mathugama today, benefiting almost 750 families in the area who were presented with hampers containing essential food items. This project of AdaDerana is a joint operation with Dialogue and will continue to be conducted in the future as well. We will see you shortly. Bear with us. Now, with a significant increase in COVID-19 cases in the past week stemming from the country's new clusters, analysts expect the Colombo bourse to be volatile throughout next week. Despite the pressure from the pandemic situation, they expect some positivity in the market due to consistent weekly earnings. Now here's a brief report on how the market is expected to behave in the coming week.
With the spread of the COVID-19 virus and the escalation in this positive patients, we feel that there is going to be a bit of volatility in the market in the upcoming week. We saw it towards the end of last week also, where on certain days there was a huge positivity, but then those gains were being erased in the following days. So this kind of volatility is likely to last throughout the upcoming week as well, depending on how the COVID-19 situation unfolds. However, if we look at the earnings outlook, there seems to be earnings now coming on a weekly basis. We feel that there is a positivity on this ground where we may see some recovery in earnings compared to the June quarter, and that is likely to be a positivity for the investor community. On the retail front, retail investors are likely to be again the dominant factor in the market, and that is likely to continue. So with that, we feel that there could be a bit of bargain hunters also that come into the market, specifically on particular days that there is a drop in the market.
Now in news overseas, the UK government has announced that new COVID-19 restrictions are to be imposed this week across the country in efforts to slow down the rush of new virus infections being reported. The UK is facing a surge of infections, reporting 884,457 coronavirus cases so far, with 44,795 deaths. Bringing an update on the current situation there, our correspondent in the UK says that there is a large number of Sri Lankan nationals in the country registered with the Sri Lanka High Commission who are still awaiting repatriation flights to fly home.
In the recent weeks, Europe has become the epicenter of COVID-19 pandemic in the world, with most European countries having gone back to impose severe restrictions in most major cities. In the UK, with the new coronavirus restrictions coming into force this week, it has changed the way millions of people are living their lives. Northern Ireland entered a 4-week circuit breaker lockdown this week, with schools shut for 2 weeks and pubs and bars closed. Wales also will be going into a lockdown this week, with pubs, restaurants, hotels and non-essential shops closing, and the people will be asked to stay at home. In Scotland, further measures to control the virus were introduced, with additional restrictions for the Scottish Central Belt. In England, as the government holistic approach is not functioning the way they anticipated, now the narrative has changed. These changes means that now most cities in the UK are under tier 2 and 3 restrictions, and more than half of England is banned from meeting friends and family. All these restrictions are having a major impact on the hospitality industry, where in certain areas the pubs and bars are forced to close early. These measures have wiped out nightlife and the entertainment industry in most major cities, and some experts believe that this could mean the collapse of some major chains. The number of deaths due to COVID are rising exponentially, and the UK registered COVID deaths increased by a third just this week. Currently, we are averaging around 15,000 new cases per day, with over 760,000 reported cases in the country. The official death figure has registered at just over 44,000 since the beginning of the pandemic. However, according to the Office of National Statistics figures, 58,000 deaths are registered with COVID-19 as cause of the death. There are a large number of Sri Lankan passport holders and some dual citizens who are registered with the High Commission still waiting for the repatriation flights. Amongst them are some uni students who are now studying online, trainee doctors and their families, and short-term visa holders.
And that's it from all of us here at First at 9. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.